That's very true. Intensives are expensive. However, to put it bluntly, the cost of not making the change you need in your relationship is actually far greater. And I'm not just talking about the practical cost of something like a divorce. I'm also talking about the emotional toll it can take on a couple when their relationship has been suffering for a long period of time, and when the change that they're making is too gradual, which is sometimes what we see in weekly therapy, even for couples who really put in the work and they have a great fit with their therapist. Often by the time they've arrived at the decision to do therapy, they've been hurting for so long, and trying to make change when all you've got is 53 minutes a week feels like a monumental task, and that costs a lot too. It can start to erode the trust in the relationship when they're not getting the kind of movement they're hoping for, despite their best efforts. So I actually have kind of two answers for this question. So the first is a little bit of what I think it feels like to work with me. And I only know this because this is what people have told me. But I have had some of my couples say that it's a lot like working with a friend who really gets both of you. So someone who cares that both of you walk out feeling like you're getting some of what you need in the relationship, you're moving closer to the things that maybe they matter a little bit more to you than to your partner, and for both of you to really feel like that with me. I also have had people say that when they step away and they go home for the day and they notice themselves getting into another little disagreement, they'll have this moment of brief pause, and in that moment they ask themselves, what would Rachel tell me right now? The other thing I'd say, though, it really relates a little bit more to how I work. So I blend a couple styles. I really like giving people experiential tips and tools. I really like giving people practical tips and tools. I also know that there's this point that people reach where they're stuck, and they know they're stuck, but they can't figure out why. And so I also like to give people a little bit of insight into why I'm seeing them getting stuck in the particular way that they are, while also giving them some applicable tools that they can use in the present. You know, a lot of people, they don't want to spend a lot of time sitting in the past and figuring out why they are where they are. I know that they want something that they can use in the here and now, but I also know that sometimes without that insight, it's just really hard to move. So I think there are a few instances when the idea of doing an intensive feels really obvious to a couple. One of those would be when the couple's in a state of relationship crisis, right? So when I say that, I mean times when a betrayal has been recently discovered, or maybe the couple's right on the brink of divorce. But I also know that there are times when an intensive doesn't seem as obvious to someone, and it's actually a really good idea. One of those times would be when a couple is embarking on a long distance relationship. So let's say that one partner is about to be deployed, maybe a partner already is deployed and they're coming home on leave, or when someone's maybe about to move states for a remote job, something like that. Another situation that's really helpful is when a couple is in a state where maintaining status quo or only achieving gradual change doesn't feel tenable. So when I say that, I'm talking about situations where either a couple really values the efficiency, they just don't want to take a really long time to get change, or when a couple is actually discerning their relationship. In a situation like that, you can do weekly therapy and you can really take your time. But when you're in that position, often taking your time feels really painful, and it's really hard to go for months without a state of clarity. And doing something like an intensive would help with that. Yes, so there are a lot of couples who have done intensives and found it to be really beneficial, either because it helped them through a time of crisis in their life and it gave them a really clear path forward through that crisis, or just because it gave them movement a lot more quickly than what they would have seen had they been doing, roughly an hour every week for months and months. I've also seen my fair share of couples who didn't do an intensive and actually really would have benefited from doing one. Not only because sometimes it leads to the relationship not working out if by the time they're starting therapy things have been hurting for a really, really long time, but also plenty of situations where it just wouldn't have had to hurt as much if they had done something like an intensive and gotten a sense of clarity much sooner rather than been kind of sitting in this icky feeling spot for a really long time.